Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome everyone to the webinar, The Insider Threat You Can't Fire, Cybersecurity in Education. My name is Rizwan. I'm the CEO and co-founder of GuardWare, and I'll be your host today. Some basic housekeeping before we get going. Uh, we'll be having a Q&A session with our guest for about 45 minutes, and then there'll be time for you guys to ask questions at the end. In between, we'll be launching some polls to just keep everyone active and engaged. And at the end of it, we will also be sending you guys a survey that will basically give you an opportunity to give some feedback. And we will really appreciate if you can put some comments inside for it as well. It helps us improve dramatically. Now, I know a number of guys have approached us regarding this thing. So just wanted to mention something before we start. So today webinar is not a product demonstration. Now, full disclosure, Rosebank College does use our products, but today is a conversation about the challenges that schools face and what good cybersecurity looks like in a school environment. And if you're watching this and want to have a conversation, just drop us an email. I'll put my email. I'll get one of my guys to put my email in the chat here. So happy for you guys to connect, and I'll personally connect with you guys as well. So let's see what today webinar is all about. Today conversation is about an environment that doesn't get enough attention in the cybersecurity side of things. It's about cyber in education and in school environment. Now, I find this really interesting because schools run enterprise level infrastructure, thousands of devices with very small teams, and yet schools manage highly sensitive information like healthcare records, pastoral care information, learning plans. And the interesting part is that they do it by giving a laptop to every student and putting them on the network. Now, the last part really intrigues me because in any other organization, if a staff or staff member installs a hacking tool or tries to do something like that, that's instant firing. You walk them out of the door. But in a school environment, if a 15-year-old student installs a penetration tool or a hacking tool just because he's curious about cybersecurity and wants to explore, you can't really fire them. You can't crush that interest. So how do you manage and protect this environment? Now, at the same time, shadow AI is everywhere now in schools. We have seen an exponential growth in it, both in students and in teachers. But teachers are adopting it at an exponential rate for research, for curriculum building, for various reasons. Again, they might accidentally put information inside those AI tools, so information that is sensitive. Again, you can't really block it because that will prohibit innovation and learning. So how do you control this kind of information? I mean, in schools, from what I have seen, is that you can't even block USB sticks. It's such a good way of receiving and sharing information. You might take a USB to the classroom and plug it in to show something. So you want to be able, the flexibility is what really intrigues me in this environment when dealing with schools. And then you have third-party suppliers that are getting breached, that might be holding a lot of your data. Canvas breach that happened recently is a good example of it. So how do you secure an environment where blocking doesn't really work, and your insider threat population is learning on the job, and you're holding data that would be catastrophic if it got out? So to discuss all this, I have Simon Fajou from joining me today. Simon is the director of ICT at Rosebank College, a year 7 to 12 independent school in Sydney. He manages over 2,000 endpoints with a team of 6 and has built a security posture that most enterprises would envy. And he has been gracious enough to give us some time and share how he does all this. So let's get on to it. Welcome, Simon.
Hi,
Um,
hi Rizwan. Good afternoon, everyone.
Before we get into all the nitty-gritty of different types of cyber challenges, can you share a little bit about Rosebank College and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure, of course. So For those that don't know, Rosebank College is based in the inner west of Sydney. We've got around about, as of, I just checked the numbers just before we got on air. We've got about 1470 students, a little bit over 200, full-time and part-time staff, so permanent staff members. And then on top of that, we've got quite a number of, coaches, co-curricular coaches, tutors, music tutors, canteen staff that aren't necessarily on our payroll, but also but come here every day. So it's a very varied number of staff as well as just your traditional students that come to the school. Importantly, we're a co-ed school, so we have both males and females coming to the school. And that's important because the way that they use the computer is very different. Teenage boys and teenage girls do use it in a very, very, very different way. We are at the moment we are a year 7 to 12 school, so we're sort of handling students from that year aged 12 to 18. But as of next year, we're actually starting our stage three. So we're accepting 90 year five students. So we're quite excited about that. That's going to
Yeah,
throw its own challenges.
that's
We're not exactly too sure what they will be, but feel free to reach out if you've experienced that. I'm more than keen to hear your stories. Um, in terms of like infrastructure, we provide our students the laptop, so the parents pay a technology levy, and we buy and manage the laptops on the students' behalf. Um, so yeah, that brings its own challenges, but also allows us to do a lot of interesting things when it comes to cybersecurity, which I'll talk about later on. I myself, I've been here now at Rosebank. This is my 10th year here at Rosebank. And personally, I've been in it essentially my entire career. I've been in and around the education sector. Started off working for student management systems. Or I think I worked for two or three originally. Ended up at a school in the East, worked there for 5 years, and then I sort of jumped ship and been here now for about 10. Started originally as the information systems manager, and then quite literally with 1 week before our first lockdown, I took over, back in COVID, so 2020, I took over the role of the director of ICT, and that is a trial by fire I wish on absolutely no
yeah,
one.
exactly.
It was like my first foray into management, let alone let's get ready for a worldwide pandemic, was fun. Let's go with that.
Yeah, we should have another webinar on
I think I've put most of that stuff out of the back, real back to my brain. Um, in terms of day to day, I mean, for those of you that are currently on the line that come from a school, you would know when I say schools are hectic places, you would understand what I mean. We are very, very busy places. There's a lot going on at any one point. Um, and the IT underpins a lot of the processes that go within school. Like from a day-to-day basis, I can literally go from a meeting in the morning where we're talking about risk and compliance and policies and procedures to the very next period, because again, we like schools, we work on periods, which really confuses a lot of people when they first start out if they come from corporate. Like the very next, like literally today, I was sitting there working with a bunch of Year 11 entertainment. There's a vet course, entertainment studies, where they learn how to do AV work. And so teaching these students, our feast day is on Friday. So we're currently setting up for that. So teaching these students, hey, this is how you set up a microphone stand, and this is the type of microphone that you've got to use for that. And then and honestly, everything in between. It is actually insane the sort of the stuff that we do on a day-to-day basis. But it is fun and is varied, and there's a reason why I still work here after nearly 10 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And uh, let's dive into a bit more side of these things that you do on a day-to-day basis. Now, I know you are a team of six managing, like you said, in quite a large environment. I mean, from an Australian perspective, that's already enterprise grade environment with about 1,500 students and devices and varied network. Now, people normally don't relate to that. I mean, I know many that still think, oh, school, that must be simple. So, what does reality look like for you in managing this and managing it in a secure manner? Yeah.
So that must be easy. It must be really simple. Is something that we hear on a very regular basis, especially those of
Yeah.
that my friends that work in the IT sector. Some in banking, some in finance, and I tell them what I do on a day-to-day basis, and they just get actually sometimes they just get scared. Like they just don't understand how we do it. Um, my personal philosophy when it comes to sort of the setup of the system is while we have quite a robust setup, it is about keeping it as simple as possible. It's sometimes that's really easy to do, sometimes that's not so difficult, especially when it comes to cybersecurity. But if we can leverage existing technologies and really, one of my key strategies is aligning ourselves with vendors that already have a proven track record. Um, in the education space, we tend to get a lot of startups approach us. And sometimes the startups are great to work with, but yeah, I wouldn't necessarily rely on a startup to be our firewall. So
Yeah.
you're relying on, industries or vendors that have a proven track record, very much is one of my key strategies here at Rosebank. Um, in terms of, I guess, a framework that
Yeah.
we sort of work towards, Essential 8 is sort of like according to, sorry, not according to is our key security framework. I think it's a fantastic tool for the education space, especially you might not be hitting level 3 across all eight areas, but to use that as your basis is and aiming for a level 1, level 2 at the very least across all 8 is something that is achievable for most schools. In saying that, that's not the only framework that I look at. I've looked at ISO, not necessarily saying go for the certification. Please don't do that as a school. I don't think that's absolutely necessary. But the ISO 27001 is a great framework to at least get ideas off and to um, base your policies around. So the policies around in that ISO 27001 space is great. And NIST is another great resource. If you haven't had a chance to look at NIST, please do so. It's their security frameworks, they're quite dry by their very nature, but they're very important and give I guess a structure towards what it is that you're aiming towards. Um, I mean, from the day-to-day sort of thing, aside from the usual, I mean, I don't really want to talk about, hey, we've got a firewall, we've got antivirus,
Yeah.
I don't, like, we all have that. But the two things that I rely on heavily, especially in the education space, the first one is an MDR solution. So while we have an antivirus, the MDR solution very much is I call it our insurance policy. Um, we do give like we're giving a teenager a laptop, okay, and a teenager by their very nature is wants to push the boundary, okay, and so while we've gone and we've attempted to lock down those devices as much as we can, you give a student a laptop with free time at home because they don't have obligations like a family like we do. They go home and they're like, hey, let's see what dodgy streaming websites that I can access that our content filter might not have, because it's a 0-day website. Or yeah, just because they've genuinely got time on their hands, they will
Yeah.
try and breach that or just do some weird stuff on it. And so that MDR for us is key. It really is what helps me sleep at night, especially the ability to like because it's 24/7 for an external company to come in and triage the situation while a student's laptop might be at home. They don't so and that has happened on a couple of occasions like where we get we get the reports coming back from the MDR when they've done their investigation, and then we'll go and have a conversation with the student. I'll talk about that I think in an upcoming question, but that's like I say that's a key thing for us. The other one for us truly is staff training. Staff training is Because we all know, like realistically, if we're going to get breached, it's going to be from an internal, like it's an internal thing. Someone's going to click on the wrong link. Someone's going to accidentally do just it, and it's never malicious. It's always an accident. So things like, monthly phishing tests, and we sign up with a service that every staff member gets a different phishing test at different times throughout the month. That's really important. I know when we started phishing simulations probably about 5 years ago. Its initial version was everyone got the same thing at the same time, so it was very obvious. Like like your staff would look at each other and go, "Did you get the weird email?" So that didn't really work as well as I wanted it to. But ever since we've engaged with the manufacturer to give us personalized phishing tests, just helps keep that front of mind. And
Yeah.
that's really what it's all about. It's about keeping it front of mind for our staff, especially in the craziness that is a typical school day.
Yeah, and it's quite amazing that you mentioned uh, essential 8 level 1 and 2 should be easy, because I know many government departments in Australia are still trying to level get level 1 done properly, let alone
Yeah,
level 2.
yeah,
So and that's quite amazing what you have been able to achieve there. And I totally agree with that comment about standards, because standards is one thing. I think your area is much more complicated, because you want to really achieve security, because like what you said, students might be adventurous, so you can't. And visibility is quite an important one. Now, and leading up to that, I mean, I think we discussed this earlier, leading up to the webinar, where you had a student who was actually trying to test out penetration testing tools in a school issued laptop. Like I mentioned earlier, in any other organization or in the industry, that's it. You show them the door. So how do you handle such situations? Because they will be coming quite a lot. And why doesn't the school simply block these?
yeah.
Uh,
That was a fun one. I will say that. So for context, just for everyone else, this probably so the story that Rizwan's referring to happened about I think about this time last year. And so my office or the IT department's area is attached to the library. And so often enough, I will go out into the library, especially during recess and lunch, get to know the kids more than anything else. And realistically, what I'm doing is actually just looking at them and watching what they're doing on their computers. So I kind of get a bit of an idea, you know, what to block, what not to block, that sort of stuff. But um, that particular week, I was talking to a student. He was in year 10 at the time, and he was saying how he was really interested in a career in cybersecurity. I'm pretty sure we were doing some year 10 subject, like career choice um, seminars later that week. And so I got to know him. I'm like, cool, that's it. That's really great. Like he's a year 10, about 15, 16. Um, and I thought, okay, do you really like in the back of my head, it's like, do you really know what you're getting yourself into? Because that's quite an intensive industry to get into. But thought it was amazing. And I was really actually quite grateful that he told me that. Because 2 weeks later, the MDR solution pings and says that particular student was attempting to install a network penetration tool. I can't exactly remember exactly which one. And the MDR blocked it, and it did its job. Thankfully, I think he tried to do it at home. And like you mentioned, in any other industry, you get that sort of alert, you are literally walked out the door that day. Like you attempted to put something that compromises your network security. Um, but we can't do that. They're a student. They're 15. They're still teenagers. They don't know any better. And so the solution for me is to actually talk to that student. So call him in. Like he is one of my um in the library. I pretty much see him every day. And still do to this day. So sitting him down and explaining to him actually what you did, it was wrong in the first place, and he knew it was wrong. Like it was not a like he wasn't meant to be doing that. But again, pushing the boundaries, working with a teenage boy. Um, but explaining to him that like I was saying, it's a fireable offense. If you do that as an adult, you're getting walked out the door. And you can kind of see as we're having this conversation, not only was he very apologetic, but this sudden realization that he uh you know he stuffed up to put it nicely. But the intention from my perspective isn't to sort of come in and go down on like go hard on him, because all that does is it kills. Like if I was to go in and go, you shouldn't have done that, and you should have just, and you're going to get a detention and so on and so forth. All that does is kill the interest. And that's
Yeah,
the
isn't it?
last thing we want. That's the absolute last thing we want. The whole point that we work in the education sector is to help these kids grow into, I was going to say functioning adults, but really like really decent human beings. And they are decent human beings, but they just need to be guided on the right path. And so, um, that's always been my philosophy. Unless they're constantly doing the wrong thing, the kids know. Like I don't ever like honestly, I can these days I can just give them a look, and they like if I know that they're playing a game in class, I just give them a look and they go, yeah, all right, and then they'll close it and move back on to the next thing. They just but they're teenagers, and their attention span is not as developed as as an adult. So um in terms of why don't we block it? I mean, we certainly try. That's um there's a real intention to try. But like I was saying before, the kids just have the time. The kids, find those holes sometimes better than a penetration tester. So, but again, because I've got I guess I've built rapport with the students. I will have students come to me, and it's happened many times over the 5 years that I've had the role. Go, hey sir, I managed to do X, Y, Z. You might want to know about it. So it's and then being quite thankful when they do come to us and not hide it. So yeah, it's interesting, and yeah, just different. It's just a different level of set of standards that we have to that we have with our students.
Yeah, and it reminds me of my time as a CIO of I mean, it's not a school but a university, and we used to get the same thing, which is, well, university students are much more persistent, I can tell you, because they were after the exam papers. I don't think they were doing anything like experimentation, but anyway, there was experimentation, and I can understand the challenges, and also understand the flexibility and the need for visibility, I'm really impressed by how you deal with it, try to get them in the right frame of mind, educate them. And actually, what they're learning is very much what they will also face when they go out to the actual their work life. And With that, we'll be launching a poll. Do take some time to fill it up. How much visibility does your IT environment or security team have over what students and staff are doing in your network? So we'll share some results once people have filled it in. And we discussed about the student side of things. Let's have a chat about the staff and teacher side of things. Now, we discussed about this thing that obviously Rosebank values the intellectual property, but you guys have also managed to adopt a very balanced working culture, which I feel is the key as far as education is concerned, whether it's university or schools, because it is a learning and research and innovation environment. So when a teacher leaves your school and they take some information with them, like lessons, plans, and etc., as long as they are authorized, and how have you managed this challenge within a school environment?
Yeah, so that's for us a very interesting scenario that really only the education sector faces that I know of. I can't really think of any other sector where we are very much like a fellowship. It's the education sector is the only sector that I know of where I can pick up the phone
Yeah.
and talk to the IT manager up the road who's never met me before, and we will have like a 30 to and this has happened many times, a 30 minutes to hour long conversation about a particular issue that I'm facing, and vice versa. And And that level of trust and friendship extends very much into the teaching space as well. And so when a teacher leaves, they want to take the resources that they've built with them. So even though from a copyright perspective, the school owns the intellectual property
Yeah.
of the school, we want to, help out where we can. And so we we do have a policy in place that's for our information transfer policy is USB sticks are only meant to be used if when authorized. And so for us internally here at Rosebank, that's the authorization from our assistant principal. Typically, that's when someone is leaving the school. And so as long as they've got permission, they transfer the lesson plans. Now, here is where I actually leverage GuardWare's Insight program. So on our staff devices, there's an agent and a data loss prevention tool is probably the best way to explain it if you've never heard about it before. And it does a myriad of things. It's not only just looking for USB transfers, but it's looking for emails to personal, also to non-Rosebank email accounts if there's an attachment with those emails. It's looking for uploads to a non-Rosebank Google account, like Google Drive or OneDrive, etc., or to an upload to a website that doesn't, again, not a Rosebank whitelisted website. So it's covering us from a lot of angles. And the management of it is actually really, really simple. I just get a daily digest of the way I've set it up is that I just get a daily digest of when just of
Yeah.
all the hits that it's had. But and I'm sure Rizwan will talk about it a little bit later on, but it can be configured in a much better way. Sorry, much more robust way. Um, but that software is key. So what it does is stopped me from having to block USB sticks that, at least from my perspective of my, USB sticks are used quite often within the education space to make it just transfer. Like for an example, we have a laser cutter that the software is out of date. And so I can't have the computer that is running that software on the network exposed to the internet. It needs to be contained in its own little area. So we use a USB stick to transfer files. So students will build um, uh, their things, and then they transfer a USB stick, put it on the laser cutter computer, and then
Yeah.
print it. So there's valid reasons as to why why we have USBs. We tend to use it, especially in NAPLAN. Even though uh, our process, like, we've since moved to Intune to push out to push out software. But back in the day, we all used to have like the IT department. When you've got 250 laptops just sitting NAPLAN at the same time, and then you quickly find out that hey, that kid they didn't get NAPLAN, they didn't get the browser pushed out to their device. We would have it's really just very very simple for us. A quick put in the USB stick, install it, move on with your life. So um, I guess that's why we have USB sticks in the first place. But we really do rely on Insight to provide the visibility of when information is transferred to an area outside of our control. And then again, having that conversation with the staff member when they do it. If they do, if they've forgotten that they're not meant to, or or if they've you know had permission, but I might not necessarily have received I didn't receive a CC in the
Yeah.
gave them permission. So and again, it's just a conversation. Hey, can or even where it really comes in handy, especially when they do have the permission to do it, I'll quickly go through the file names and see what they've transferred. It's very, very typical that a staff member has just copied their downloads folder into
Yeah.
a USB
Yeah.
stick.
Exactly.
And then inside that downloads folder is we call them like personalized learning plans,
Yeah.
and it's got a particular naming convention. Okay. And then I'll go in and say, hey, cool, I've seen what you've transferred, but can you at least, like, these are the ones that I'm a bit, that I can see. Can you delete, either delete that whole downloads folder or just delete, those particular files depending on what they've got. So, but it's just about being transparent. really, it's being transparent with our staff, that
Mm.
gets you buy-in.
And and I'm sure with this transparency and visibility, shadow AI would be another cause of challenge. It's
Mm.
taking hold quite rapidly, and there are two populations to deal with. You have the students who are trying to use it for all forms of interesting usage, let's say related to their courses and their schoolwork, but also you have the staff who are trying to, well, do the right thing and also experiment. So how are you handling this kind of information, this challenge, and ensuring that sensitive data is not being mishandled?
Yeah, that's a fun one, and especially when I guess, like I would imagine, like a lot of industries, when ChatGPT was first released about 3 years ago, or sorry, became mainstream about 3 years ago,
Yeah.
we all sort of found ourselves in a bit of a quagmire. We didn't really know exactly which way to go. I know that the first 6 months was very interesting. We were sort of just waiting for. It just felt like every week there was something new that was coming out with AI or a new model or a new use case, and so we were just like that first 6 months. We were just waiting for the ground to settle just for a little bit because we wanted
Yeah.
to know. Because how do you make a policy when the goalposts change literally the next day? And so um, we didn't necessarily, at least maybe for the first, at least for the first 6 months, we were sort of just testing the waters with what we could do, but we weren't necessarily using it for any process improvement or anything like that. But since then, like yeah, we as a school have really pushed our use of AI in interesting ways. Actually, I really find I love hearing from the teachers how they've been leveraging it. Um, I'll talk about the students first, and then I'll talk about the staff. The students, they're an interesting bunch. And to be fair, you would think most of them, like for anyone outside the education sector, you would think most of them just use it to, to do their assignments for them. And look, there's an element of that. Again, teenagers, they're going to push the boundaries that, they, I certainly can't say anything. If I've got something that will save me a couple of minutes, I'm going to use it. Um, but the students really use it in an interesting way. They really do use it as a research partner. And
Yeah.
and I think it's fantastic. Like I'll sit there and especially those kids in year 11 and 12, the ways that they've been taught to use it. I love I think my favorite use case is when if there's an assignment that like is a hand-in assignment, they and there's a marking rubric because yeah, there's a marking rubric that goes along with every assignment. Students will upload their upload their submission to say we Copilot or Gemini internally, and then they'll upload the marking rubric and they'll say, don't like how can I make this better? How can I make like what do you think according to the rubric? What do you think I will get? And then can you give me suggestions on how to actually make it better? And that's the perfect example of how we want our students to ethically use AI. We don't want
Yeah.
to do, and that's such a like us internally. So we very early on took there's an Australian framework for generative AI. Like there's a particular standard that was written by the Department of Education.
Yeah.
And its whole purpose is to, I guess, provide a framework or a guideline for students, for schools. And it's all about embedding AI ethically. We all know it's not going to go away. Like everyone on this call knows that it's like magically, the 50 million data centers have been popping up around the world recently and forcing RAM prices to triple. They're not going to go away. So we need to teach our students how to use it in a way that enhances their learning, not like it supplements their learning and doesn't take over their learning. And so that's a challenge that I think we're doing pretty well at here at Rosebank. In terms of the staff and sensitive information, especially the first couple of months, it was very much relying on policies. Please don't, before the concept of like, so, sorry, that first year in education space, there was no, like, even though we've got Microsoft A5 licenses, and we also have Gemini, like, there was there. the concept of, I guess, containerizing that information didn't exist at the time. But that's since changed. And so we were sort of, we kind of felt like it was going to go down that path. So maybe that first year of AI, we were very much our policy was, and still is, try, don't put, especially unless we've got control over it, don't put sensitive information at all into AI. Not even like if you're going to reference a student, just put their first name or ideally, student A, student B, student C. Um, but since moving to, since the change of licensing, we've certainly embraced Copilot and Gemini, um, and have leveraged a little bit more and using those particular features. Shadow AI still exists. Like, we can't control what a staff member does on a personal device outside of our network. Um, but I think that's a challenge that every industry faces. But we do have the policies in place to sort of cover and govern the use of AI within, for Rosebank staff and students.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously with the visibility side of thing is quite important. And so we're starting to get some poll results here. So it's interesting that um, so some of them, well, it's skewed more towards the lack of the visibility side of things and partial visibility because it is hard and the kind of tools you need tend to be quite expensive. So in a school environment, I mean, you don't have enterprise level budgets as well. So so
Not at
it
all.
gets, yeah, exactly. Um, so uh, so we will be launching another poll here. And that's a second poll. Have a go at it while we discuss another very interesting area. Now, I do see some guys raising their hands. We will have time for Q&A at the end. For time being, if you can just post your questions, or just wait for another 10 minutes and we can get into your questions as well. Okay. So, so now let's talk about the Canvas breach. Third party risk, right? So you have third parties holding a lot of sensitive information. Well, first of all, did this impact you and how did you manage the risk?
Oh, yeah, that was another fun one. So yes, it impacted us. We are a Canvas school. Have been for quite a number of years actually. I think since 2015, 2016. So there was yeah, we were very well and truly, at least sorry, let me there's more to the story, but we thought we were breached. So for those of you that aren't Canvas schools, you may have heard about what happened, but long story short, they were breached. And in early May, we received an email, like as administrators, we received an email from Instructure directly. Um, you've been breached. Essentially, that is, to cut it short, you've been breached. We're confident that you've been breached. And so, but we're still sort of doing the forensic analysis. We don't exactly know. We think it was so the email was like, we think it was student names, email addresses,
Yeah.
messages, and so on. And of course, we get that Saturday. I think it was like nine. Like the initial email of you. Sorry, the initial email was you might be breached, and that came through Saturday 9 a.m., which is great. Um, uh, that was so. So anyway, we get on the phone, talk to the principal, give them, give the ICT committee, send them an email, give them a heads up that this might be coming. We get proper confirmation on the following Monday, and then it put us in a little bit of we had a bit of a conundrum because we were very much, we knew we had an obligation to tell our parents and our staff and our students that, hey, we've been breached by, our third party software that we don't have control over has been breached. But we didn't exactly know what was breached, like, because we were just getting told, we were getting drip fed information. So again, in this, like everything that we do, especially in my department, is in the spirit of transparency. We went out later that day. We sent an email to the parents, just stating exactly that. It's like, look, we believe we've been breached. Um, this is what we know. Unfortunately, there was sorry, I can't say it was a lot. Most of our parents, actually all of our parents were great. I got a couple of emails back from parents who weren't blaming us, but just the lack of detail. So they would sense the same frustration that we had internally, and so I got on the phone and called to them and call them because I certainly don't think exchange of emails helps in that situation. But so talked to them and sort of and had some really interesting conversations with the parents. I think by the end of the year, and so on and so forth. Anyway, fast forward 2 weeks. I think in that 2 weeks, I must have sent the emails about four different emails, our staff three emails, students as well, three emails. We used it as an opportunity. So we sat there and thought, okay, look, there's nothing that we can like. What could we control? And the one thing that we did control was trying to enable, like for us, multi-factor is optional for parents. Um, because the nature of the biggest reason is the nature of dealing with parents is a lot of the time they are wanting to access our systems outside of school hours, outside of our operating hours. And so if I turn on MFA and they have an issue trying to log in with MFA,
Yeah.
like who are they going to call? They've got no one. And then they go back to work the next day and they've completely and then frustration and so on and so forth. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that's always but we had it on, and it was interesting. There was a little bit of an uptick in parents who took us up on that offer, and that was actually from a security perspective that was great to see. But fast forward, I think to 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks after that, again on a Saturday, we get the email. Yeah, you know how we told you that you were breached? Actually, you weren't. So. And I know that was a good thing, but that's also 2.5 weeks that I'll never get back in my life. And um, yeah, that was I can't really complain. I should be like we're quite grateful that our information wasn't breached, but it did teach us a lot. Like it taught us if I'm looking at most of the vendors that I deal with, Canvas or Instructure is probably up there with at least the biggest. Um,
Yeah.
they have all the certifications. They've got ISO 27001. They are GDRP certified and so on and so forth. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it just goes to show that even those guys can get breached. So to a certain extent, those certifications theoretically mean nothing. So
Yeah.
um, so we're sort of going through this process, and I'm sure a lot of schools that are sort of in that space to, I guess tighten up our third-party vendors. And the education space does use a lot of there's been a real push internally as some of it is a risk mitigation strategy so that we're not hosting so many things on site, letting vendors host their
Yeah.
own equipment. Um, but working towards those vendors and what we can do to sort of mitigate that risk. And some of it is really easy. Some of it's like only using Australian vendors that are well known and so on and so forth. But Canvas was something that I inherited, like even though I've been here for 10 years, it was something that I inherited over the school. So, and it's our chosen learning manager system. So,
Yeah, and I guess you will obviously automatically would have selected it because, well, it's a well-known brand and you trust it. And I think it's all comes back to understanding the risk and understanding what data actually goes inside it, and then making a judgment call that, okay, is this risk manageable, considering they have all the certifications and yet they can get breached. And it's quite interesting. Um, well, we'll be talking about this. That's why I feel controlling data and understanding what data you have is quite important now these days.
mhm.
So yeah, poll number two is also we rely on policies, which was more about school institution currently managing the risk, sensitive student data being copied to, especially when staff leave. So again, lack of visibility is quite a common uh, thing that we are seeing right now in the school side of things. Last question. So if you are advising an IT director who has just handed responsibility for cybersecurity at a school and they have got a small team and a limited budget, so how should they get on with it?
Um, It's funny, as I was writing notes for this. My first instance was run, but I don't think that's an option. Um, for me personally, the best thing that I did was actually just getting to know the environment. Especially if you've never worked in education before. If you've come into education and it's your first, even if you've been an IT director, at a much larger institution with probably a much better budget, coming in and understanding what you have, what you don't have, what are the holes, and just like sometimes it genuinely is asking really, really simple questions like when is the last time your firewall got updated? How are you managing server patching? Um, every school, some schools do that really, really well. Some schools, like because of the craziness of the school, wouldn't surprise me if servers don't get patched until the holidays. That's probably the one thing that we're quite lucky about in the education, so in school spaces, we have holidays to do major work. Um, but get to know your environment, find the holes, ask the questions,
Yeah,
and then you can come up with a plan. It's like you're not gonna tackle everything at once. You will go insane if you try to do that. But at least you know what it is you're working with. The the other thing that I actually really I like doing is leveraging penetration tests and leveraging audits. So please do not be afraid of an audit. It's not meant to be a scary thing to go to. It's actually how Rizwan and I met. Like, so for those of you that don't know, years like what, 4 years ago, I believe.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's been a
Rizwan,
while now.
it's been Rizwan did an audit on us against the Essential Eight standards, and he came up with a bunch of recommendations and sort of you're leveraging on I managed to use that to leverage budget that I might not have had that year to sort of to work on things and process improvement and so on and so forth. Like I think people are forgiving if, at least from my experience anyway, people are forgiving. You might not necessarily have everything in place, but if you have a willingness to work towards closing those gaps and working to, and doing things in the best interest of the school, you'll go far. So, yeah, don't be afraid
Yeah,
of pen tests and don't be afraid of audits. That's probably they
that's
are your friend.
and that's a very good advice. Well, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So you need to first understand your risk in the first place. So,
Yeah.
with that, let's what we'll do now. So that brings us to ends of the question side of things. So, Tom, if you can just share. So what we'll do is, so if in another 2, 3 minutes, I'll just share what GuardWare is all about, and then we can get into some of the questions being asked by our participants. Okay. So, so normally what we do in these webinars is that we don't cover what GuardWare does because we want to keep this informational and actually educational. But for those of you who are wondering what we do, so we are a data-centric security provider, Australian, and started off originally with dealing with Australian defense, and now we have actually gone into all different sectors and have actually expanded globally as well. We offer three core products and an assessment as a service. Offering assess your risk is a service, which is basically you take it as a service and an assessment. You run it to understand your data risk, what are your shadow AI risk, etc. And then you can put some measures around that. Three core products all around understanding your data, which is discovery, which actually does a data discovery scan and helps you to find, locate, and classify sensitive information. Insight is what Rosebank is currently using as well. It's our monitoring capability, it's our DLP capability. It monitors information movement across corporate, non-corporate, all different forms of channels, encrypted, non-encrypted, including on AI side of things as well. And it does it at a content level. And Protect is our encryption technology. GuardWare, if you visit our website, you will see a statement saying that data should protect itself. that is we have launched it this year. It's a capability where data remains protected and encrypted, even if it gets hacked, stolen at all times. So this is encryption in use. Now, if sorry, if I can just go to the next slide. Now, education was also a big part in the education arena as well. We do offer some specialized capabilities around this thing. We have actually launched a new capability, which is cyber awareness side of things within the consoles as well, where if a staff or a staff member does a risky action like uploading something onto their an AI tool, or they have mishandled some information. It's like a speeding ticket concept, which he or she actually gets a notification explaining exactly why that is a risky action, and that can help them guide them in the right direction. And we are getting quite good feedback around this from all different types of sectors, including not-for-profits, etc. So it's a slap on the hand and just guiding them in the right direction, because that seems to work the best way. We On AI visibility, we did talk about it, and I saw a question around this thing. So GuardWare does a lot of stuff around this thing as well. Insight is our capability that provides you visibility down to the prompts levels, and if information is being pasted inside those prompts, and it does cover all different fine types of shadow AI, corporate, non-corporate, everything, and you'll be able to see it at a content level. Okay. So, and with that, for anybody who has registered or has joined this session, we are offering a free shadow AI risk assessment, running using our tool. And it's a 3 weeks process where you will actually be able to see live what information is being placed inside AI, inside your environment on shadow AI, who is using it, what are they doing with it. Full detail is quite an eye opener, like what Simon said. Get an assessment, get an audit, and this will guide you on how you want to manage it. Okay. Now let's get into some of the questions. So I do have two questions here. Um, so so one of them is, well, quite a straightforward question, Simon. What MDR tool are you using?
Sophos.
Okay.
So yeah, Sophos is MDR, inbuilt MDR solution. It works really well. It's I and the real reason I use, I mean, I use it because again, it's something that we've just had within the school for quite some time, but specifically acts as a backup content filter if something happens to the actual one that we got on the student devices. So um, sometimes causes some issues for us when we try to whitelist something. We try to figure out what's actually blocking it.
Mhm.
But Sophos works really well on all of our staff, student, servers. Um, yeah, but it is pricey. I'm not gonna say it's cheap. It is a pricey solution.
Yeah. And the other question was, well, it's again, how are you stopping shadow AI or shadow app websites, etc.? I guess it's all comes into the one large arena, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, for staff, I think I saw the poll, and I think for the
Yeah.
it was most people were using policies and procedures. And to be fair, that's my
Yeah.
primary use. I could go and block all the other ones, but I haven't felt the need to because there are, especially for some staff members, I want them to, a little bit to explore. Like okay, how do I know Copilot's the best thing out there? It's probably not. Everyone, like we're using Claude, we're using, but what I do ask for them is if they are, again, spirit of transparency, if they are going to try out a new piece of software, that they let me know before they use it. And so, just so I can, look at the privacy policy or, vet it before they actually do start to use it. Um, and the staff are pretty good at that. Students, yeah, that's a different story altogether.
Yeah, exactly. Well, with that, if anybody has any questions, Happy to take those right now. I think Suleiman, you've raised your hand a couple of times. If you have any questions or if you want to discuss separately, just send us an email. Happy to come back to you with any of your questions that you might have. Okay. Um, will we give it another minute or so if somebody is still typing any questions? If not, very exciting, Simon. Thanks for your time for this webinar because it's quite an interesting arena when we deal with schools and universities, and it's many of the frameworks don't really. It's very hard to apply the framework in its true sense because the environment inherently needs flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest challenge you have, that you still have to maintain security, but you still need that flexibility, and you have to find a balance in between. And with the emergence of these new AI tools, etc., like it's going down to understanding what data you have and how it is being utilized is going to be quite critical. More and more so as we move into this new uh, well, I will say highly connected environments that we are now moving into. Yeah. Um, all right. I think we are in time, so all good. I don't see any more questions being posted, so all good from our side. Thank you so much, Simon, for your time. Really appreciate it. Lovely talking to you every time we have a chat, and thanks for everybody for joining in.
Bye, Rod.
Bye.